Hello everyone and welcome to this episode of The Flying Scotsman's Christmas. In this episode we're going to be taking a look at Windows 2.x. Specifically in this video we're going to be taking a look at Windows 2.11 386. Now Windows 2 came out 30 years ago on, I think it was the 9th of December 1987. Now normally at this point I would be doing, a wee documentary, a wee history of Windows 2.03 or what have you, just kind of to place it in context and, kind of the future of Windows 2.x and what have you. But because of TFS Christmas and because I've not actually been really in the best kind of health recently, I've not been able to sort that out. In fact, as it turns out, it looks like I could have a slightly bum parathyroid gland. So, getting some tests done for that at the moment, and they might need to weak it out. So, it's nothing too big or anything, what have you. And, hopefully might actually start to be able to feel a wee bit better and a wee bit lethargic afterwards, but and actually might be able to make better quality videos. But so basically that's what's been going on, and this is why it's been really quite difficult for me to shut out videos in recent times. A bit of a shame, but hey ho. Anyway, so back to this then. This is Windows 2.11 386, and to be honest I think it was the best version of Windows 2.x, and the reason for that is because it would run in protected mode. It would have it took advantage of things on the 386 processor, and you can actually quite easily run DOS programs from within Windows 286, 386 rather. Except for this one, which I've never really been able to get to run properly, but oh wait, no. Are other copies of WordPerfect currently running? Nope. And there we go. Well, isn't that a nice surprise? And for some reason I've got caps lock on. And here's a fun fact actually about this setup I've got going on. My first exposure to Windows 2.x was actually back in 1997, when Windows 2.x was 10 years old. And that was on a machine on which I was writing my life storybook at the time. Except to write my life storybook, I actually was using WordPerfect in DOS. So 20 years later, we have a nice coming together of WordPerfect 5.1 and DOS. And Windows 2.x. So why don't we save this document as nonsense. And we'll quit WordPerfect. So there you go. That's the Windows 2.03 could not actually run DOS programs under itself. In fact, I actually had quite an interesting problem that kind of cropped up earlier when I was testing out some programs. I ended up having a copy of Windows 2.11 286 launch under Windows 386. And yeah, and I'll tell you for why that is. See, while Windows 1.0, you know, it came out, didn't really have that much in the way of third-party support. There was a version of Aldous PageMaker for that version of Windows, but that's that, and probably a handful of other utilities is really all I could kind of see for Windows 1.0. Windows 2 actually got quite a lot more productivity programs, including ones from Microsoft, believe it or not. Microsoft, I don't believe, put out any programs for Windows 1. But with Windows 2, we did actually get Microsoft Excel for the first time on IBM PCs. Originally, that was a Macintosh program, as was a graphical version of Microsoft Word and PowerPoint, believe it or not. They were all Macintosh staples originally. But you know, with Windows 2 coming out, we were finally able to get versions for Windows. So, what we can do here is we can go into WinWord, and there we go. So now we've got the Microsoft Word's interface. Let's see if I have any fonts. Yeah, there are a couple of fonts installed in here. Seems that back in the day, programs still kind of took their fonts with them. But you could actually have different colours as well if you wanted. So let's... Why is my caps lock back on? What is this? So I can change the fonts in here if I can ever find the I-beam. So this, well, I mean, this is just Microsoft Word, essentially. Oh look, actual sizable fonts. I mean, I really don't like any of these fonts, but hey, you know, they do actually appear to work. So we've got Modern, which is quite a narrow sans serif font, and you know, we can embolden that, make it look a bit better. And like I said, I mean, we've got other things. Oh, I quite like that. The small caps. So there's a lot of things that you've got. Spell check, for example. You can do multiple documents. Full menus. Nice. So now we've got different tables and what have you. Boom. So this is when Word really starts to come into its own. So, you know, you could have, you know, you could insert pictures. New picture. That'd be quite interesting. Is this where we're going to start to see some very basic object linking and embedding? No. Um, but yeah, I mean this. So we've got a few programs running under Windows 2.0. But what about Windows 2.0 itself? It's all very well and good me showing you programs, but I mean, what about the actual operating system? Well, let's have a look at some of the things that come with it. Oops. You've got... Whoops. Nice one. Windows comes with a README file that's too big to read in Notepad. Well done, Microsoft. Well done. Round of applause for you, you bunch of idiots. We have Reversi, which actually came with Windows 1.0. And speaking of Windows 1.0, is anyone noticing what is happening on the screen? Well, I'll tell you. Overlapping windows. Believe it or not, this was the first version of Windows to come with overlapping windows. I don't know how to play this game at all. But you also get the calendar and the card file, which used to be a Windows 3.1 staple. That would make me go, oh, what's happening here? Why are these things no longer there? Windows, even for Workgroups 3.11. Got the clipboard, got your clock. Nice. The basic control panel from Windows 1.x. And when I used to mess about in Windows 2.03 back 20 years ago, I used to love just to ficker about with the desktop. So, for example, the menu bar. One thing I always found fascinating about the menu bar is that the selected items was always the inverse of the colour of the menu bar. So, you might be wondering, what do I mean by the inverse? Well, the default title menu bar in Windows 2 is aqua. When you select something, it highlights it in red. But if I was to change the menu bar to yellow, for example, like it was in Windows 1, the selection would change to blue. So you couldn't actually have the selected items colour be any colour you want. In fact, that option wouldn't come about until Windows 3.1. Also, something, while we're talking colours in Windows 2, you only got 8 colours, quite literally. I never really knew why that was, the fact that you only got 8 colours. But, and that's certainly interesting that that was a thing. One thing that was interesting about Windows 2.x was that it was often included as a runtime environment with other programs. So even if you never actually had Windows 2.x installed, you probably may have still used it if you're using something like Microsoft Excel or ME Pro. Well, not ME Pro, just the first version of ME. So I'll show you what I mean. Whoops. So now it's loading Windows 286.211. And there we go. We have ME Pro. And for some reason, I'm having trouble getting mouse pointers working on this virtual machine. Please forgive me this. Oh, I think... Have I? Nope. So what this essentially does is just loads up the program that you're needing. And you have access to the control panel and the print spooler if you need them. But mostly it's just the word processor that you get access to. And the same goes for Excel. You get a runtime copy of Windows with it. There you go. Microsoft Excel. or at least in terms of Microsoft Excel, you can actually run it from within Windows if you do have a Windows installation. And I don't know why this Windows installation isn't giving me the full 640 by 480 pixels. It seems a bit odd. So again, if I go into ami.exe, well, for some reason this doesn't work on this does not seem to work in this Windows installation. I have to run it from its own, but Excel works absolutely fine. So I think that will do it for this particular video, but what I do plan to do in the new year is to actually do a kind of a more full documentary on Windows 2.x, you know, following you know, some of its development and you know, some of its you know, the life of the operating system before it was succeeded by Windows 3.0. But that will be in the new year. But for now, I'd like to thank you for watching this video, and I hope you'll join me for the next episode of The Flying Scotsman's Christmas. Cheery bye.